Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome CloudBees Vice President of Marketing, Andre Pino.
Welcome to Jenkins World. Did you like our little Lego Jenkins pipeline minions? Aren't they cool? You're going to see more of them, too. So our event this year is bigger than ever. Look around the room. We're about 40% bigger than last year. In fact, thinking about last year, by a show of hands, how many Jenkins World veterans do we have in the room? How many Jenkins World newbies do we have in the room? Wow. That's awesome. And you know what? This is truly an international event. We have over 45 countries represented here in this room today. Thank you for traveling so far. You know, we thought about the theme for this year, and the conference theme this year is Transform. And you know what? It is such an appropriate theme for our industry and for our group, for the group in this room. In the room, we have Jenkins, we have CloudBees, and we have an amazing DevOps ecosystem. And together, we are the Jenkins community. And together, we are leading the DevOps revolution that's transforming the way software is developed and delivered around the world. And together, we're helping businesses to operate in new ways. In fact, the software that's being produced is changing the way people live their everyday lives. We're even helping to transform entire industries. And I would say that's quite an accomplishment. Give yourselves a hand. But you know what? There's so much more to come. And starting today, you're going to get a glimpse of what's to come with Jenkins and with DevOps. So we've got a full conference planned for you this week. We've got so many things, and so I want to take a few minutes and highlight all the things that we have going on this week so that you can really take advantage of all of it as you walk around the conference this week. First of all, for the past 2 days, over 800 people have been attending training sessions and workshops, sessions that span Jenkins certification testing, Jenkins pipeline advanced techniques. We've even had DevOps leadership training by the DevOps Institute. So over 800 people involved in the last 2 days. But beyond that, we've got 3 book signings this week. Book signings by Gary Groover, Jez Humble, and Victor Farsick. So make sure you take advantage of those books that will be available at the CloudBees booth. We also, by popular demand, have the guys from CommitStrip, all the way from France, coming to do the mural. You saw artist Etienne Sartial on stage doing the live drawing. Well, we've got the 2017 mural out in the hallway. And this week, please put your mark on it and color in a section of it for us. That'd be great. I mentioned that we were bigger this year. We've had to add 2 additional tracks. We now have 7 tracks representing over 60 sessions at the conference this week. In fact, on Thursday morning, we even have a Women in IT networking breakfast that'll take place. And this year, we've added a sign language interpreter for the hard of hearing. So it is an amazing conference. Many of you know that during this week we'll be doing Jenkins certification testing so that you can become a certified Jenkins engineer or a certified CloudBees Jenkins engineer. And this week those tests are free, so please take advantage of them. Also coming up, we've got the first annual Jenkins Awards. So tomorrow we'll be announcing those awards, 2 categories of awards, the Jenkins Community Awards and the CloudBees Innovation Awards. Our expo's bigger this year. We've got over 50 amazing sponsors, including our diamond sponsors, Amazon Web Services, CA BlazeMeter, Docker, GitHub, and Red Hat. We've also got a lot of fun planned for you this week. We've got a sticker station sponsored by Sticker Mule, where you can swap stickers and get stickers from all the various vendors. We've got new for this year, a Jenkins store, so you can pick up some Jenkins gear. And we have a t-shirt press station out in the big hallway right outside these doors. In addition to that, on the expo floor is our social networking station. There'll be plenty of props there for you to take a selfie and post your picture to your favorite social network. Now, tonight is our reception. And in celebration of the 50th anniversary of the Summer of Love, our reception is themed around the Summer of Love. Don't worry if you forgot your headband or your peace sign necklace. We've got that for you. And all of our vendors are going to be doing something along the lines of the Summer of Love. And backed by popular demand is the Dick Bright Band. They were awesome last year, and they're going to be with us again this year. So please come to the reception tonight. Make DevOps, not war. And you can even take a picture with this really cool hippie bus. And we even got a couple of cool Jenkins hippies that you'll be able to take a picture with. Now, I want to remind you, tomorrow, back in this same room at 8:30 in the morning, is our another general session, our day 2 general session. And that will feature a keynote by Jez Humble, and is also where we will announce the Jenkins Awards ceremony. So we've got also a closing session tomorrow. This is something new that we've added as well. So in the closing session, you'll hear closing remarks by our keynoters, Sacha, KK, Jez Humble, and also Jane Grohl from the DevOps Institute will also be there. We've got a number of prizes that we'll be giving out, but you've got to be present to win. And those prizes include a brand new MacBook Pro. And of course, if you don't care about any of that stuff, just come for the beer. It's going to be a great time. So as you can see, there's a tremendous amount happening this week, and we really want you to take advantage of as much of it as possible. But I did want to also highlight that the Jenkins World app is playing an even more prominent role this year. In fact, if you download the app from your app store, you'll be able to look at the schedule, you'll be able to see the session descriptions, you'll be able to see the speakers and understand their background. You'll be able to see who the sponsors are. You'll be able to see a conference map of the conference area. You'll even be able to network with other attendees and even request a ride. But also this year, this is also the way that you'll be giving your presenters post-session feedback. So go to the schedule, select the session. At the bottom of the session description will be the link for the post-session feedback survey. Please give us your feedback. Every presenter needs to understand what you thought of their session. The app also has an activity feed, which is where you can spread the word. So please help us get the word out about Jenkins World so we can make it 40% bigger again next year. Finally, this is also this year we're doing the annual Jenkins survey through the app. And so this is a really important survey for us because it's the way we get to hear from you about the direction we should be taking Jenkins in the future. And also, for those of you that do fill out the survey, you'll be entered into a drawing to win either a pass to Jenkins World 2018 or an Amazon gift card. We've already got the date set for next year. It's going to be right here in San Francisco. It'll be right here again at the Marriott Marquis. So save the date, September 16th through the 19th. I wanted to thank a few key groups that really make this all possible. Number one is the Jenkins community, who submitted over 175 abstracts for this conference this year. I wanted to thank the Jenkins Governance Committee, Kohsuke Kawaguchi, Dean Yu, and Tyler Croy, who helped to give us guidance around the development of this conference. I also want to thank CloudBees, who has the enormous privilege of producing and organizing this event with the community. And I also want to thank our sponsors, not only because they make it possible, but because they truly make this an industry event. So in closing, I just want to ask you to go around the conference this week, learn as much as you can, network with the other attendees, but most importantly, be inspired. Be inspired by the DevOps and Jenkins automation that you see. Be inspired by the DevOps leadership that you see, and be inspired by the DevOps success that you see. And then go back and take that inspiration and impact your own organizations. Thank you very much. Have a great week.
Think back to a time before software ruled the world. How did you do your grocery shopping? How about making dinner arrangements? What did it take to travel from one side of the country to the other? Deciding to attend Jenkins World would have meant researching trade journals and requesting brochures by mail. Figuring out how to get there meant calling your travel agent and choosing from limited, expensive options. Waiting on the sidewalk and hailing a taxi to the airport. Oh, and bringing actual books to read on the plane. But fast forward a few decades. Today, software is everywhere. And it's transforming our lives. It's saving us time and saving us money. It's even saving our sanity with conveniences we never dreamed of before. Today, you can research any destination in the world in your home, online. You can view hundreds of travel options from the palm of your hand. Just click and reserve a plane ticket. Click, pay for it with PayPal. Click, hail an Uber. You can stay connected even 35,000 feet above the Earth. Work on a report. Learn a language. Watch a movie. Order a snack. You can even register for Jenkins World. And check into your hotel before your feet hit the ground. And when you arrive, everything you need is ready. Jenkins orchestrates it all.
Please welcome to the stage the Jenkins Project founder and Chief Technology Officer, Kohsuke Kawaguchi.
Thank you. That video, I don't know what to say. So today, I want to start my conversation by looking at the evolution of life on Earth. Because, speaking with Journey, coming from Tokyo to San Francisco and all. So about 540 million years ago, a very important event happened to the life on Earth, and that is called Cambrian explosion. Right? The life form before that was pretty simple, but within this relatively short period of time, suddenly a whole lot of change happened, and all the major life forms that we know today has emerged afterward. So if you think about evolution as this accumulation of, the random traits over time, then this is kind of puzzling because you expect the complexity to grow steadily and slowly over time, not suddenly jump like it actually happened. So I read up on it, and what actually happened was that even though the change might not have been visible, there's a lot of changes under the surface. And then when all of them got together, it exploded into this, this event called Cambrian explosion. So, for example, one of those is the sexual reproduction. Right? The simpler life forms they multiply by simply splitting. So what happens is that as a species, they kind of need to keep reinventing useful mutations over a period of time. Whereas if you have sexual reproductions, a species together collectively can discover a useful trait, so they can sort of adapt and evolve far more quickly. Another important thing that happened prior to the Cambrian explosion is the acquisition of eyes, the thing's ability to see. So obviously, the predator got a whole lot more effective, right? Now, before that, I basically think of the life form as like a jellyfish in the ocean, right? So like a drifting around, and if you touch something, you could eat it. With eyes, you can target them a whole lot better. And when the predator gets more productive, the animals who got eaten also have to catch up the game. So it suddenly puts a whole lot more pressure to the evolutions. So the thing is, these individual abilities, when they combine, the ability to sort of evolve faster and the pressure to do so, that's the kind of combination that makes like a 1 + 1 more than 2, and 3 and 4 and 5, that creates the explosion. Now, if you look at sort of how Jenkins evolved, I feel like there's a part of it that happened in similar manner, right? In the early days when I started this, it was just basically one app designed to serve one use case, which was my team, and done by one engineer, basically me, right? So even though it was releasing every week, you wouldn't see much changes, except underneath, what was happening is that I was putting lots of sort of things that might not be sort of invisible individually. So the ability to load code dynamically, compose the user interface on the fly, and building the sort of a tooling to create the plugins, the infrastructure to distribute those, and all that invisible work eventually crystallized into the update center, which you hopefully have already used. That allows Jenkins to sort of suddenly become incredibly useful for quite a number of people, and started what I think of as an era of Jenkins 1. So I feel like that transition, the update center transition, is for us the Cambrian explosion. And what followed was this amazing grand bazaar, right? Contributors from around the world who I have no idea existed start setting up this shop in the little alleyway, building interesting plugins, sharing the ideas and exchanging them so that the other people can pick up what's selling on that street and then build amazing CI/CD process. And this was sort of also a product over time, right? Back then, the automation was already a thing, but it wasn't sort of recognized as a profession. It is often a passion of one engineer in a team, just like it was for me. And then so these people had a very specific idea of what they wanted to do. They were like a craftsman. So that they were able to go shop these pieces, put things together, was quite useful. Now, what happened to the life form on Earth after the Cambrian explosion, right? So it created this relatively stable period of time for several hundreds of million years until, again, during this period, there's a number of evolution, again, invisible to the eyes, have happened, and eventually led to a completely different era. That is the sort of awesome story on its own. But it seems that the life on Earth has evolved rather unevenly, right? There is something like Cambrian explosion that creates another stable period, which caused another drastic change in the end to the completely separate era. And if the software is evolving like that, if Jenkins is evolving like that, right? Starting from this infant days into the era of the Jenkins 1, what is it that's going to follow? Like, what's the next era? What's the next stage of evolution for Jenkins to be? Right? So I feel like just like the Cambrian explosion was a combination of useful traits working, making 1 + 1 bigger than 2, I feel like the same is happening with Jenkins. So one of those, I think, is the Jenkins 2, right? We've done this at this point maybe a year and a half or maybe 2 years ago, right? Jenkins 2 was many things, But one of the important changes in the mindset of the developer community, I think, is to try to sort of move away from this mindset of building a bucket full of Lego blocks that can be combined into something that can be pre-assembled, ready for people to use to get productivity right out of the door. In other words, the better out-of-the-box experience. Right? And all that ability to compose pieces are still there and incredibly valuable, but that can be done later when you gain more confidence to the Jenkins. Another part of the Jenkins 2, as a community we started to take on more seriously, is this realization that just building pieces is not good enough. We need to arm the users and show them so that they can use it productively, how to do that, how to use them productively, right? So I think of it as like, creating this lit path, the best way to use Jenkins, and provide the documentation, reference manual, that sort of thing, so that the people can walk through this well-lit path, and instead of wandering into the dark alleyway and then get lost, like I almost did last night. Right? So that was the important part of the Jenkins 2. Another important trait, I think, that's going to push Jenkins into the next era is the pipeline. This is also an effort that we've been doing a while now, but put simply, the pipeline is the better way to configure Jenkins, configure your CI/CD process. It allows you to create a Jenkins file in your source code repository and the version control those. So it works with your existing code review process or existing mechanism to make sure that the changes are well vetted. What used to take, let's say something like 5 freestyle jobs, combined with upstream and downstream triggers and whatnot. I'm sure many of the Jenkins users have done that. That kind of thing can be now concisely expressed in one pipeline, which makes it much easier for people to understand what's going on. Another benefit to the pipeline is that it grows with your, the growth as your need goes from a very simple build and test workload gradually to more sophisticated and complicated delivery pipeline. And you can keep using the same paradigm, the Jenkins pipeline, instead of forced to ditch the paradigm somewhere in the middle, like how it used to happen for some people. Another problem we fixed with the Jenkins pipeline is the statefulness of Jenkins. With pipeline, you can restart the Jenkins in the middle, or your agents could lose communication, and your build will be still running. And when Jenkins comes back up, it remembers what it was doing. It also creates this next level of reuse so that people inside the organization, or hopefully within the community, could share useful parts of the pipeline and then allows other people to build productive pipeline a whole lot more quickly. Defining pipeline is really easy, right? You define that in terms of the stages, and inside stages, you can define stuff that happens. And the Docker support is a first-class citizen, so you could specify the images to be used to run different parts of the pipeline, if necessary, or the whole thing in one go. And all the power of the Jenkins that we have built over the past, 5-10 years is within hand's reach. So integration with different tools, capturing reports, sending notifications, and all sorts of other things that the 1300 plugin enables can be readily accessed from the pipeline, making this a very powerful system. And the pipeline allows these individual primitives to be composed and abstracted into more higher level, more useful building blocks that in turn allow your developers to use this more productively without being on Jenkins exports. And you have access to this capability yourself by using the mechanism that we call as a library. So here I defined my build, and it looks looks and feels like a built-in step, but it's actually defined in the Git repository and is sort of connected to your to the definitions through one of the Jenkins configurations. So this kind of mechanism again allow you to create higher level PCs that sort of models the problem closer to the domain. And if you need to, I know that the real world can get a little complicated at times. So, if you can, in those cases, you can tap into the power of more sort of flexible scripting language to get a little things done, and then sort of get going without, again, being forced to ditch the paradigm into doing something else. Now, and this, I think, is also a product of the time, right? In 2017, the software, sort of automated software delivery is becoming more and more important. It's something that a lot of people, not just the software companies, a lot of mainstream companies, the household names, would have to think about, because as Andre mentioned, the software is eating the world, and everybody is realizing that the software is the critical part of the business value in their organizations. So the automation is no longer a craft that somebody with a passion in the team is going to do. Instead, what we are seeing is the industry scale, large-scale automation with the sophistication at the level unparalleled, just compared to just a few years ago. So these individuals that were part of the team that was passionate to do the automations, now it's more and more common to see this shared services team, and they're the one that's tasked within the organizations to drive this, the more further automations, provide this infrastructure and tooling and whatnot to make individual projects and product teams productive. And these other teams can simply leverage all the works to get going more rapidly. So, again, if the Jenkins is evolving like this in an uneven manner, right? Are we already there yet, right? We talked about the Jenkins 2, the better out-of-the-box experience. I talked about the pipeline, right? Do these things enough to get us there? I think there's actually one more effort that we are taking on that really sort of closes the whole cycle to make this like a 1 + 1 + 1 equal to the 5 and 10 and so on. And that project is we call the Blue Ocean. The Blue Ocean is a CloudBees, I guess, the sponsored or CloudBees-led project in the Jenkins community. And as a CTO of the company, this is one of the projects that I'm really proud of, because it shows the ability of a company to sort of put a positive effort inside our open source project. Right? To do the whole new user interface like Blue Ocean did, we need to have people from different skill sets, like designers, engineers, the product managers, for them to collaborate with highly and then drive toward the same common goal, which is historically difficult to do with open source developers who generally do not know each other. So what I like to do is to invite the mastermind behind Blue Ocean on stage so that he can tell us about why we did the Blue Ocean, where it's going, and why that matters. So please welcome James Dumais, the director of the product management CloudBees. James, come on up. All right.
All right. Thanks for the introduction, Kohsuke. It's fantastic to be here on stage at Jenkins World to talk to you all about Blue Ocean. As Kohsuke mentioned, my name is James Dumais, and I'm a director of product management here at CloudBees, but I'm also the creator of Blue Ocean. For those who aren't aware of it, Blue Ocean is the new user experience for Jenkins designed from the ground up for teams practicing continuous delivery. We have created Blue Ocean as a response to the fact that the way that we develop software is changing at an incredible rate. And what this means is that there are more developers than ever before with vastly different skill sets and backgrounds, who need to deliver software faster. So to cater for the needs of these modern developers, our tools not only need to be powerful, but they need to be easy to use and help inform the whole team about how software powers their business. That means that continuous delivery needs to be accessible by the whole team. And that's why we've rethought everything with Blue Ocean. Let me walk you through what a continuous delivery pipeline looks like in Blue Ocean. The pipeline visualization is designed so that anybody involved in the delivery of software, from your most junior engineer to your CTO, or even your head of marketing, can make sense of continuous delivery. So my pipeline starts here with a code change. We first build the software, and then we pass it to the next stage where we test across a variety of different web browsers. For those of you building web applications, this should be a very common pattern. The pipeline then analyzes the results, ensuring for consistency and automatically scanning for defects. Then finally, the most important part, we deploy our software to production where our customers can benefit from our changes immediately. So why don't we take this CD pipeline for a spin? We had a little problem here.
All right, this is where I want to say some jokes to keep the audience entertained. So let's see.
Terrible.
I think there's got to be some joke about the Japanese and the Australian on the stage and doing something funny, but I'll leave it to you guys to think about.
Yeah, our network is dead here. Come on. Oh. Oops. I think we had a crash. Apologize for this.
So one of the things that James does to me all the time is like tell me things that I don't know if he's serious or he's joking.
This one I'm serious about. This is not great. All right, cool. So let's take this pipeline for a spin. So as you can see, Blue Ocean has a very beautiful, clear, modern visual design, which makes using the application day in, day out just such a joy. When the pipeline executes, the visualization automatically starts updating, keeping you apprised of where in the pipeline it is executing. Blue Ocean is built from some of the best modern web technologies available, like Facebook's React.js and server-sent events, which means it loads lightning fast and page refreshes aren't necessary. The activity is broken up step by step so that you can get to the part of the pipeline you're interested in. Now, when things go wrong, we can narrow down on the problem very, very quickly so that you don't have to scan through thousands of lines of log to find the problem. Blue Ocean also actively scans for new branches and pull requests in your repository to ensure that your code is tested before it's merged and deployed to production. I'm happy to announce that as of today, 1 year since launching the beta at Jenkins World last year, Blue Ocean has over 14,000 installations, which is just an incredible result. And I'd like to thank the community and CloudBees customers for all their support. We've been hearing a lot of great stories about how Blue Ocean has been transforming the way that teams have been delivering software over the last year. And in this time, we've also been releasing new features and improvements which make Blue Ocean lovable by more and more teams. What I've shown you today only scratches the surface, and I'd love to see you tomorrow afternoon at the Blue Ocean State of the Union, where we'll be covering what we've been working on in more depth. And don't forget, Blue Ocean is free and open source software, so it's available today from the Jenkins Update Center for free. Thanks, everyone, and enjoy Jenkins World. Back to you, Kohsuke.
Thank you, James. And going back. Oh. All right. Wow. So the Blue Ocean is, like I mentioned, the CloudBees lab project in the community. But the real power of the community comes from collaborating with other people in the project. So it's hard enough to find contributors in projects, but it's a particularly rare and fortunate event that we can find other companies who have the same mission to help organizations drive digital transformation through the power of the software. So here, I'd like to invite one of those, I'd like to invite Eric Van Ziest. He's the architect of Atlas and Bitbucket. Eric, please join me.
Hi, Kohsuke. Thank you so much for inviting me to Jenkins World 2017. It's really great to be here today.
It's fantastic to have you. Now, one of the things as a CloudBees CTO, I find that surprising is that, Atlassian is truly everywhere. We use the Atlassian tools by ourselves, but in fact, fully 1/3 of our customers are using Bitbucket either on cloud or on-prem, and I find that amazing.
Yeah, I agree. That's a huge amount. It's a huge overlap between our products.
That's right.
And it is something that we only fairly recently sort of discovered when just a few months ago, like our teams connected over a technical issue between Jenkins and Bitbucket Cloud, and we worked together. And after a couple of exchanges back and forth, we started to realize just how critical Jenkins is to so many of our Bitbucket customers.
Indeed. So please tell us how the Atlassian helps companies drive through and go through this digital transformation.
Right. So Atlassian's mission is to unleash the potential in every team. And we do that through our suite of products, our ecosystem, and the many integrations and add-ons that are available through that. They aim to foster a culture of collaboration and trust inside organizations so that teams, whether they be technical teams of software developers and DevOps people, or non-technical teams, have everything they need to collaborate more effectively on building and delivering better quality products faster. And a key element to that mission is our ecosystem. And our ecosystem is made possible through the many plugin points and extension points that we have in our products, our open APIs, and marketplace. And the marketplace is open to anyone building integrations, add-ons, or people using them. Now, those can be proprietary add-ons, they can be open source add-ons. And today we have over 3,000 add-ons available in the marketplace.
Wow.
And they are helping our customers to get the most out of the products that they choose to use within their organization, whether they be Atlassian products or non-Atlassian products. And in fact, Jenkins is a good example of a non-Atlassian product that is very critical to a lot of our Bitbucket customers. And so that led us just a few months ago to come together and cooperate on building really top-notch integration between Bitbucket Server and Cloud and Jenkins Blue Ocean. And I'm very happy and pleased to announce that that is now available.
That is an exciting news indeed. So can you show us how that helps the Jenkins users and Bitbucket users?
Yeah, for sure. So easiest way probably would be to take you through it on screen.
All right.
So if you are in Blue Ocean and you go to create a new pipeline, you will find Bitbucket Cloud and Server available as a first-class code host. If you're on Cloud, you can choose your Bitbucket team and then the repository on the team that you want to create a pipeline for. When you do that, you're taken to the visual pipeline editor that James showed us just now. And there you can go about your business configuring all the steps necessary to build, test, and deploy your project. And when you're done with that and you save this, then Blue Ocean will go out and create a Jenkins file and go out to Bitbucket to push the new Jenkins file to the Bitbucket repository. It then kicks off the pipeline and brings you straight to the results page where you can see whether it worked. And all of this without the need to leave Blue Ocean or manually edit text files. Now, on the Bitbucket side of things, the integration then publishes the results of the pipelines directly to Bitbucket, where they show up in the UI, on commits, on branches, on pull requests, and where they can be used as conditions on merge checks on pull requests.
Cool.
And so all of this is built in and ships as part of Blue Ocean 1.2.
That's right. And the CloudBees Enterprise customers is going to get this feature later in this year.
Yeah, and I think it was a lot of fun working together so closely on bringing this into the product. I'm also pretty happy with what we've been able to achieve in just a short few months. And I'm thinking that maybe we should be doing more of this in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, we are already working toward the next set of integrations between Jira and Jenkins. We know our teams are in contact. And then so what we are aiming for is people who are using Bitbucket, Jira, and Jenkins together are going to get the best of the experience out of these tools.
Right. It's going to be really good. And one other thing I'd like to bring out, considering the fact that Jenkins is so popular in the open source world, is that while Atlassian's products are not open source, they are and always have been available free of charge and without limitation to every open source team. And with that, I have to say I'm looking forward to the next couple of months to see if we can replicate some of the things that we've done to the Bitbucket integration and apply that to integrations between Jenkins and some of the other Atlassian products, such as Jira.
Yeah, thank you very much, and me too. And I'm really looking forward for this to become, this is just the beginning of a long-lasting relationship between our CloudBees and Atlassian. So, thank you very much, Eric.
Thank you.
All right, so that was the Bitbucket and Jenkins integration. So with these three pieces in place, the better out-of-the-box experience, the pipeline, and Blue Ocean, I think we are really entering into the new era of Jenkins. And that's, I think, the part of the reason why companies like Atlassian has a renewed interest in the Jenkins project. And it's not just Atlassian, right? Microsoft has the people working in the Azure integrations. The Red Hat has a bunch of people working for the OpenShift integration in Jenkins, and so on and so forth. A lot of users are also feeling this change in the air. So, the Twitter sphere is, here are some of the quotes from there showing the happy users who've been using Pipeline and Jenkins. The quotes that I put up there is from the Hacker News, which I normally think of as a very cynical, hard-to-please audiences. And even those people are noticing that something is different in Jenkins. Another stat that sort of back up my claim is perhaps the growth of the pipeline. Just in the last year, the number of pipeline jobs that you guys have collectively created have multiplied by 30 times, which is a tremendous number of growth. And I'm quite impressed at that. Another program that sort of indicates this growth in the Jenkins is perhaps the Jenkins Area Meetup. This is a coordinated effort within the community to try to work with the local the local community leaders to build this organized meetup in different areas so that the people who are passionate about the automations and Jenkins can exchange their knowledges, swap their nodes, and sort of discuss their challenges that they face in their day-to-day lives. So we have close to 60 meetups with the 14,000 members around the world. And I know some of these leaders are here today. And just to put this number in context, right? I mean, we used to do these meetups in smaller scale at various places, but it really was until the 2015 that we sort of have very modest growth, and then it kicked into a high gear once we started organizing this more carefully and doing proactive reach. So that, again, is another indication how the world is seeing the changes in Jenkins and then sort of finding that really useful. And I mean, look at this, our sponsors in this event, right? It's almost like a who's who of the industry. And the fact that so many people, again, so many companies find Jenkins a useful part of their strategy, what they're trying to achieve, is another testament to the fact that the Jenkins remains a very stable and useful critical piece in our industry. So so I've been talking about this evolution of Jenkins, evolution of life, and how that has happened. But still, as a tool maker, I've been doing just talking the talk, right? But I'd like to invite somebody who's actually walking the walk, like doing this transformation, like you, right? You're going through this transformation yourself. So that company is PayPal. I know these guys for quite some time now. Back when PayPal was still part of eBay, because eBay itself was a big fan of Jenkins. And in PayPal, there's a team that I think of as the shared services team that I mentioned earlier, right? The elite automation engineers who is making their developers, a whole lot more productive. So I'd like to invite Moeed Wahid. He's the Director of Developer Experience at PayPal to share his experience of going through this journey. Come on, Moeed.
Hey, Kohsuke.
Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I'm responsible for developer experience at PayPal, and my engineers keep our developers humming and productive at PayPal. At PayPal, we want to democratize the financial services and empower people and businesses to join and thrive in the global economy.
So, my interaction with PayPal, so I use PayPal, obviously, to do lots of things.
Thank you.
And, I use cell phone to do that. So I think of all the financial companies, I think of PayPal as perhaps more technology company, right? That's, I feel like, the critical part of your business. Is that right?
Absolutely. Software, we process $350 billion payment volume.
Wow.
And we serve 210 million customers. And it is incredibly important for us to build and deliver software smoothly. If you look at the scale, we have 4,000 engineers working on 2,600 services, and they will operate on 70 million lines of code. If you look at just the dev test workload, we ran that on 30 racks.
Wow. That's, the scale of that software development at that side is a little mind-boggling for me working for a smaller company. But what's the role that the Jenkins plays in sort of keeping that all things going?
Jenkins plays a very critical role in our DevOps journey. The reason we picked Jenkins was because it's free, not like free beer. It's like freedom,
right,
so that we can look at the code, we can change the code, and contribute back to the open source. When I was drafted into this role, I was looking at, shall we build this CI/CD pipeline, the whole software and the ecosystem in our team?
Mm-hmm.
I thought that is a huge undertaking, given that there is a huge development community around it and the whole ecosystem of plugins.
I'm glad you chose that path.
Yeah. And Jenkins got popular really quickly at PayPal, and soon enough, we realized that we had 40,000 jobs in a ginormous single instance. And we knew we cannot scale like this.
I remember seeing that, yeah.
Yeah. So we moved to a federated model where we gave one VM to each developer with Jenkins installed on it. And we had 2,500 Jenkins running on our private cloud on OpenStack.
Wow.
And out of which, only less than 10% were active.
Wow.
And we know, the developers were very happy because they had the freedom,
right,
and they were empowered to bring their own plugins in this ecosystem.
Right.
But as a DevOps team, we were not happy about the efficiency. So we moved the whole Jenkins infrastructure to Mesos, where we can spin off Jenkins masters and on-demand agents, and we reduced the operational cost by 10x. Wow. And we are the first ones who run Jenkins on Mesos at scale. Mm-hmm. And we noticed that we have 2,500 Jenkins instances, and there is a chances of drift in the node to node.
Right, okay.
And we Dockerize the whole Jenkins infrastructure so that we can have immutability and with zero drift.
Wow.
And along the way, what we did is we instrumented the whole Jenkins infrastructure so that we get a lot of insights, and we can stay ahead of any issues preventing our developer experience and developer productivity at PayPal.
Wow.
And with this freedom that we provided to our developers started exploring Blue Ocean. And they started loving it. And there was a huge pull from our engineering community instead of a push from our infrastructure side.
That's great to hear.
Yeah, thank you. And we came a long way on our DevOps journey. We started, today we have 5,000 Jenkins instances running 32,000 builds a day, And we run 1 million test cases every single day. Every code change in PayPal goes through a pull request that does build, unit test, static analysis, and code coverage.
Wow.
And this whole thing is orchestrated by Jenkins.
Wow.
Thank you.
Yeah. That's an amazing journey and like an eagerness to take on more changes every year. Like I'm truly impressed. Now, so clearly this is an important thing for PayPal, for the company to have a team dedicated for this mission. So at the end of the day, like why does this matter to PayPal? Why do you do this?
We believe in providing rapid feedback to our developers so that they can iterate on their code faster and deliver a great quality code and ship features to the production as fast as we can. When we started our DevOps journey, it used to take days and months from a feature development to production. And today, we reduce that whole cycle time to less than 24 hours.
Wow.
But my goal is to take this to less than 5 minutes.
Wow. Yeah, that you were able to go down from a month to day is impressive enough. That you have your eyes set to going down to 5 minutes, that's another order of magnitude improvement. So that is crazy. I also note that throughout this journey of like all these changes that's happening, you found Jenkins to be a valuable cornerstone that stay with you to drive you to where you need to go. So on behalf of the Jenkins community, I really like to appreciate the trust that you put on us and what we are producing. And thank you very much.
Actually, thank you, Kohsuke, for building Jenkins. And I look forward to see Jenkins evolve and meet my expectations.
Cool. Yeah, I'm going to work harder. Thank you very much, Mojit.
Thank you.
That was Mojit from PayPal. So, as Mojit was describing all these changes that he was going through, right? What I was trying to draw the story on is the fact that our landscape, the context around us is changing, and the Jenkins has been evolving over the past years to keep up with that challenge. So those are the kind of the thing behind the pipeline, behind the Jenkins 2, behind the Blue Ocean, and so on. And with the better out-of-the-box experience, the pipeline and Blue Ocean, Jenkins is really entering into another stage in its life, and I hope you'll be a part of that journey. And this week, you'll be hearing a lot from, let's say, other practitioners who is going to share their experience, and the people who are making part of the Jenkins, and then they can learn from them about where Jenkins is going next, and you'll be talking to the other people like sitting next to you, so that what their challenges are, and then sort of compare notes and be better equipped. So next week, that would enable you to go back to where you came from and then drive better changes in your organizations. So I hope you enjoy the rest of the week. That is Jenkins World 2017, and looking forward to talking to more of you in the booth, in the hallway, and everywhere else. Thank you very much.
Since the beginning of time, human creativity has fueled new ideas. New ideas to improve life. New ideas to improve business and make business go faster. New ideas to make business perform better. Today, business ideas are accelerating at a remarkable pace. Why? The limitless power of software. Software is rapidly changing the way business operates, integrates with partners, and interacts with and reaches customers. Today, software no longer simply supports the business. It is the business, driving rapid change, transforming entire industries. The change is happening so rapidly that digital Darwinism threatens any who are slow to adapt. Today, every business is in the software business. Entire industries are being disrupted. Look around. What is at the heart of all this change? CloudBees, Jenkins, and you, the DevOps community. Together, we are driving these transformations across every industry. Whether CloudBees is contributing to Jenkins or creating new, innovative functionality that enables automation at enterprise scale, we are the backbone of continuous software development and delivery. We transform business across industries. From small scale to large, to very large, we automate software delivery. We scale it for the enterprise. We secure it. And most importantly, we make it real. Together, we sit at the center of an amazing community. Stay tuned. The best is yet to come.
Please welcome to the stage the CEO of CloudBees, Sacha Labourey.
Hello, everybody. I'm very happy to be with you this morning for this amazing Jenkins world. I remember 5 years ago, we had the first Jenkins world. We were around 200 persons, and we're in a single room. Now we're an order of magnitude bigger than that. We have 7 tracks, training, workshop, certification, and so on. And I think more importantly, last night I received my official CloudBees Jenkins shoes. So, yeah, I think that makes it the best Jenkins world ever, period. All right. So the theme this year is going to be transform. That's the theme of the conference. And today, I'll be talking about how enterprises transform their business thanks to software. I'll be also receiving some partners that make this possible. And obviously, I'll be presenting some cool new solutions that we're releasing to market. Transformation, well, we also transform as a company. So CloudBees has been evolving, and the ride we went through is pretty amazing. The last few years have felt like going at warp speed. I just wanted to share some numbers with you to just put that in context. In the last 12 months, our revenue have grown by more than 80%. The size of the team has grown by more than 60%. And during that transition, we really took care to make sure that we were investing in things such as customer success, QA, professional services, support, training, to make sure that our customers were being taken care of through that extreme growth. And this growth is essentially just a proxy of how this economy is booming, how DevOps is really growing that fast. And it's accelerating, so we're getting ready to accelerate and double next year. Before we talk about transformation in enterprises, I'd like to say a few words about what we've achieved as a company in the last 12 months or so. First, in the community, and I'd like to take a minute just to congratulate Kohsuke for the amazing work he's been doing in creating that project and leading that community for more than a decade. We're talking about not just one community, but to me, with 1,400 plugins, we're talking about 1,400 mini communities all aggregated around Jenkins. I think this is pretty amazing. So congratulations, Kohsuke. I'm also very proud of the way CloudBees as a company has been interacting and collaborating with the Jenkins community. Some of the things really matter to us, and we've been initiating a number of key projects, key initiatives for the community. We've seen James and Kohsuke talk about Blue Ocean, obviously. But Blue Ocean, to me, is really more than just a better UI. It's a complete new way to interact with Jenkins. It's a new user experience. It's, for once, opinionated, and it's putting pipelines at the core of everything that we're doing. It's really making Jenkins the leader in continuous delivery. And what's also very important, what was very important to us as a company is to ensure that Blue Ocean and Pipeline were not simply made accessible to the leading edge users, but really to anybody. We wanted to make sure that we had widespread adoption of Pipeline, hence declarative pipelines, hence graphical editor of Pipeline. If you know how to click, you know how to develop a pipeline. I'd like to also say a few words about the CloudBees engineering and QA teams, because there might be some things that's not visible to many of you, but you know, like any software, you have security issues that pop up from time to time. And the teams at CloudBees have really invested large amounts of time. And I know they've spent weekends and nights sometimes to fix security issues. And that work sometimes is not talked about, it's transparent, but I can tell you it's real. I think this year we had around 10 advisory already, 70 fixes. All of that work has been done by CloudBees engineers for the most part. All right, let's talk about some of the CloudBees products now. Let's start with CloudBees Jenkins team. What's amazing about Jenkins is those 1,400 plugins, right? That's hugely valuable. It means you can really customize to Jenkins to whatever you need to achieve. However, much like any extensible platform, think about Drupal, think about Linux, anything essentially where you can extend the core, you've got a matter of compatibility that pops up, right? Typically, those extensions are going to be compatible with core. That's not so much the issue. The issue is what happens when you start mix and matching a lot of those extensions together. Is it still going to be compatible? Well, obviously, if you don't have any extensibility, that's an easy problem to solve, right? You're not going to have that problem. But that's certainly not the case with Jenkins. So CloudBees delivered last year CloudBees Jenkins team, a certified distribution of Jenkins that's rock solid. It's not just rock solid because we test it and validate it and validate a subset of the plugins that enterprises are using, but we're also making sure that we provide a monthly release train so that at any point in time, you get to upgrade your instance and always be with the latest bits. That's specifically important because we've seen a lot of companies essentially trade innovation by fear of breaking their Jenkins instance. But that's crazy, right? DevOps is moving at warp speed. New features are coming up. We've seen those today, right? And so by refraining from updating, you're essentially not leveraging some of the new capabilities Jenkins is offering to you. Thanks to CloudBees Jenkins team, you get both innovation and peace of mind through that migration. So this has been a very successful initiative. Last but not least, I'd like to talk about CloudBees Jenkins Enterprise, which is kind of our crown jewel product. If you have more than a team or two, but you really want to expand that to more teams, or maybe to your entire enterprise, CloudBees Jenkins Enterprise is for you. Let me show you what we're solving for you. And let's talk about how typically adoption of Jenkins takes place in the enterprise. Typically, in a typical bottom-up fashion, Jenkins gets used by a team. So you've got one team, you've got one master, you've got the pipelines associated to that team operating. That's pretty easy. Plus, this master typically only handles the plugins that this specific team wanted. Everything is fine. If that instance goes down, only that team is impacted, you restart it very quickly, and you're good to go. However, the NTAP pattern that we observe a lot is for companies to start onboarding new teams, one on top of the other, on top of the same instance. We call that the Frankenstein Jenkins, right? Because every team has slightly different requirements. So, oh, you know what? I'm doing mobile development. Can you give me the mobile plugins for Jenkins? And I'm doing also some core development and some load testing and some whatever. So you end up with this big Frankenstein that has lots of plugins that might not be super stable, and you keep adding more teams logging to it. You keep adding more jobs executing on it, and at some point, it doesn't work. And when it doesn't work, it crashes, and when it crashes, it impacts all teams, and it takes more time to restart. So people get pissed, right? So at CloudBees, we have what we call the distributed pipeline architecture. And with that architecture, we essentially allocate a distinct master to each and every team. Those are not going to be your Frankenstein masters. Those are going to be very nimble, dedicated master just for one specific use case. You're going to be customizing this master on a team-by-team basis, but you will get control centrally to operate that fleet of Jenkins in an extremely simple fashion. What that means is that not only each and every team is going to be more stable, but that if anything wrong happens, it's going to only impact that team. So this distributed pipeline architecture is really at the core of CloudBees Jenkins Enterprise. Last year, we did a demo. We had 2,000 masters, 10,000 executors happening at the same time. And thanks to the use of containers, we were essentially just using 300 virtual machines, slightly more than 300 virtual machines, which means great density. So that's really what we're achieving here. So with CloudBees Jenkins Enterprise, essentially, whenever you have lots of people, lots of teams, and you know they're going to be consuming lots of resources, you pretty much know you're going to have a scale issue. And that's what CloudBees Jenkins Enterprise is solving for you as a unified enterprise solutions. We're going to make sure we provide all features you need from maintenance, upgradability, monitoring, alerting, logging, and so on to make sure your experience is unique. Last year at Jenkins World, we announced support for native cloud layers like OpenStack and AWS. And after that, we announced support for Red Hat Enterprise Linux as well as vSphere. And soon, we're going to be announcing support for Kubernetes support as well as other platforms based on Kubernetes. So CloudBees Jenkins Enterprise is really going to help a lot of teams within your company. The centralized DevOps teams, well, they're going to be able to scale a very stable environment, a continuous delivery as a service for your entire organization very simply. Your Jenkins admin, your team owner, well, they will be able to customize their environment to exactly what they need, if that's what you want as a company. And last but not least, the DevOps engineers, the people doing the work that help you differentiate on the market, they'll be able to use an environment that always has enough resources, that's always ready, and they won't have to care about anything. And that's potentially the best part. All right. So we've talked about the CloudBees Jenkins solutions. Now, I'd like to spend some time to talk about how companies go about adopting DevOps. What's this journey? And I'm pretty convinced that a lot of you will recognize themselves somewhere in that story. I hope so. We see that a lot. Pretty much all companies we see go through those steps. And hopefully, and that's my hope, you can avoid some of the pitfalls we're seeing through some of those transitions. So if you look at a typical journey to DevOps, what happens is that initially, well, there is nothing. Maybe central IT is providing some tools and processes, but those are not DevOps processes. Those are not really continuous delivery processes either. Those are just, traditional tools. And so some teams, leading-edge teams, will change that. It's going to happen in a bottom-up fashion. You're going to have teams reacting to that, and so they might download Jenkins, or maybe they're going to leverage a SaaS with a credit card. That's called shadow IT, right? But whatever, that's great. It means people want to change. People want to move. The problem with that is essentially everybody ends up with their own little DevOps religion left and right. You have no way of moving people left and right. You end up with team defining what their software stack is going to be, what's the best way to do it, how to maintain it. So it's very costly. Plus, there is no business continuity planning. So it's a good way to be more efficient locally, but really that's not a solution for a corporation. The problem with this approach also, unfortunately, is this can last a very long time. Based on what we see, this is not bound by time. It's not like after 6 teams, well, the central IT wakes up and say, oh, enough is enough, let's fix it. Maybe that's what should happen. That's hardly what happens. What we see happen, though, is that at some point, a maverick company enters that space and start leveraging software to compete against the establishment. And when that happens, suddenly software becomes a new normal. That becomes a new baseline. that company have to use to be competitive. So essentially, a lot of companies are forced into moving and adopt DevOps at scale within the organization. We call this digital Darwinism. Either you step up and up your game to leverage software to your advantage, or bad things are going to happen. So a lot of time we hear those business transformation initiatives take place. So those are typically the reaction to those external threats. So a board of director or the exec team is going to force a business transformation within the organization. And that's very important actually to happen, because a lot of things need to happen. I would love to tell you that, you just need to give us a PO and buy CloudBees and everything is going to be fine, right? But there is slightly more than that to it. You'll have to adapt your processes. You'll have to change the way the company is structured and organized. So it's a complicated problem to solve. And unless there is buy-in from the top management to make it happen, it's going to be hard. So what typically happens is we see a centralized team, say the DevOps centralized team, in charge of defining what does it mean to do DevOps at company X, right? So they go in a room and they work hard. Every company is slightly different. They might have their own processes, their own regulatory issues, their own infrastructure or software stack. So they need to look at the big picture and see how can we achieve DevOps in this company. And again, it's not an easy problem to solve. So they're typically going to go through some discovery, try this out with a couple of teams, and at some point, they're going to feel like they're onto something. What we frequently see as being topics of discussions are around centralizing things versus distributing control, right? Obviously, if you centralize more your infrastructure, you're going to have a better economy of scale. You're going to be able to offer more services to your teams. But then you might be afraid that your teams are not going to have enough power, enough creativity they can unleash to do their job. So there is always this debate that takes place between going one way or the other. There is no single answer. Every company will have to find their way through that maze. However, one thing that's very common to everybody is that nobody wants to end up with 16 solutions to do continuous delivery at scale. You can see that as the next generation ERP for IT. They want to have one way to look at the performance of all teams, all applications. You want to be able to measure how things are progressing and where you can help and mentor people versus where teams are doing great, what resources you might need to inject in your application. To do this, you need a single dashboard, a unified strategy across your organization. So this centralized DevOps team at some point is going to come up with their strategy. They're going to cherry pick a number of products that will be applicable to everybody in the organization. Obviously, you're going to find Jenkins, CloudBees Jenkins in there. You're likely to find things like Atlassian Jira, GitHub, and Docker, right? Those technology are really generic to everybody in the organization. And then a number of team-specific solutions will be cherry-picked. If you do mobile development, you will need some tools for mobile development, and so on. But those are specific to some teams. And what's amazing about this is at some point you might be happy and you might be like, great, we've discovered how to do things. The next morning you realize you have another problem. Your problem is not just to define that stack. The question is, how do you distribute that stack and make it accessible to dozens, hundreds, or thousands of teams within your enterprise? That's a real challenge. And that's where we start having quality discussion with enterprises around CloudBees Jenkins Enterprise. We offer a way to provide centralized control and economy of scale, but at the same time, we give flexibility to the teams to achieve whatever they need locally and be creative in those teams. So this is really a way for customers to focus on business value rather than building their own solution. So a company that went through such a transformation and has learned a lot along the way is Accenture. So I'd like to welcome on stage Stas Tviniatsovsky from Accenture. Welcome, Stas.
Hello.
All right, so Stas, you have a lot of experience in that field, obviously. So first of all, I'd like to hear a bit more about Accenture. We all know Accenture, but it would be good to have a refresher.
Yeah. So Accenture is a global company, global consulting company. We work with companies around the world to help them achieve their dreams. And one of those dreams is DevOps. So we work with companies to help them plan for DevOps, implement DevOps, execute DevOps. And for some companies that choose to do so, we also run DevOps infrastructure for them.
All right. So what is DevOps at Accenture? What does it mean?
It really started 15 years ago when we started centralizing build and release infrastructure for our teams. We realized that it makes a lot of sense to centralize it because our teams can move fast, efficiently, with quality, and that ultimately allows us to compete in a very competitive market.
All right. So what were some of the challenges you faced through that transition and through that evolution of DevOps within Accenture?
Yeah. So the biggest challenge is scale. We are 400,000 plus strong employees. We have 25,000 unique users on our infrastructure, and each user is unique, and they have their unique needs. We solve that by running massive infrastructure, CloudBees at the core as the engine. We also have our own Accenture DevOps platform, ADOP, that allows us to, we open sourced it actually, so anybody can download it and install it. It allows us to repeatably and reliably deploy continuous delivery pipelines from team to team with best practices codified in those pipelines.
So maybe you can tell me on how many geographies is this operating? Do you have any idea?
Oh, we are all over the world, on every continent.
So it's central for the rest of the world, for everybody?
Yes.
All right. So you talked a bit about centralized versus distributed. Did you face some pushback from teams, or how did that work?
If teams want to operate with true DevOps and release multiple times a day, very efficiently, very reliably, you need reliable and available infrastructure. And it is very hard to achieve that. It requires a lot of specialized knowledge. It requires significant investment. So it makes economic sense. It makes logical sense to centralize it. And then you give self-service and the abilities to teams to execute on their own. You skill them in DevOps. You teach them how to use the infrastructure. And that ultimately allows us to have teams move very fast and efficiently. And again, that ultimately allows us to compete and achieve great results for our clients.
All right, that's great. Thanks a lot, Stas, for coming on stage.
Thank you.
Thanks. All right, so I've talked a lot about the past. I've talked about what we see in enterprises. The question is, where are we going from there? And as a company, we've spent quite a bit of time making sure that companies could really enable teams within their organization. Make sure that continuous delivery was available to as many people as possible within their organization. And that's a great step. It's not just great, it's a fundamental step to enable continuous delivery. And now we're really focusing in our next phase on unlocking business value, focusing on how can we extract more value out of processes. So today, I'm very proud to announce a new initiative, a new solution called CloudBees DevOptics. So to introduce DevOptics, I'm going to talk about data model, the data model of DevOps. I'm going to talk about data and system of record. So bear with me. All right. I'll talk also about the importance of looking at the big picture and how, when you're focused, it's hard to see the big picture. But being focused is important. Whenever we do our job on a daily basis, we need to be focused on a specific task. It's very important. It's part of being efficient. But if you're only focused, then you're missing the big pictures, and you don't see how things are impacting you in a positive or in a negative way. And so always keeping that big picture is very important. And so if you look at Jenkins, for example, initially everything was a job. And so people were working on jobs, executing jobs. Those were in all likelihood chained in some bizarre fashion. And nobody really had a meta view on how all of this was taking place. So people were working on jobs. And so part of the values that Pipeline brought is that it makes it possible for people to remain focused on their job and what works or what doesn't work. But it makes it also very easy to see in context where things stand within the bigger picture. And I think one side effect of talking about pipeline, talking about continuous delivery and so on, is that a lot of people start thinking that continuous delivery is about a team creating a pipeline which leads to an application. If that's your case, you're very lucky. In most cases, that's not quite how it's working, right? So we all think this is continuous delivery. Well, in many, many cases, this is not how continuous delivery looks like. So I found these pictures that I really liked on a blog from Microsoft on a microservices architecture, and that was a value stream they've really written down based on the discovery process they've made. And that's much more typical of what we see in the trenches. So that's not just one pipeline. So maybe you're here, that's your team, okay? And did you know that a bunch of teams actually are impacting your work? Depending on what they do is good or not good, you might get good or bad results as well, right? And that guy, do you know where he's working? What geo? What master? Maybe it's on your master that's overloaded, or maybe not, who knows? And that team needs to absolutely fix a security issue. Any idea when this is going to land on your application? And is it impacting more than one application? Hard to say. You'd better get a great network within your organization to solve that type of problem. So if you look at things in an enterprise, it looks a lot more like this, which is a bunch of frameworks, teams working on frameworks. Those get used in lots of different subsystems. Subsystem gets used into applications. So it's really a lot of teams collaborating somehow together to achieve success with some applications. And so if you look at this specific example, you essentially have 6 different teams working towards the success of their application. So to make sure that it's possible to really get quality insight on how things work, it's important to further zoom out, step back, take even more distance. And what does that mean? That essentially means enriching the data model of continuous delivery. Today, Jenkins focuses on users, jobs, and pipelines. What about teams? What about applications? And more, all right? So one important area of work for CloudBees is to keep extending the vocabulary of DevOps to make sure that we can step back in a variety of ways and give you insight into a lot of those axes. And what's amazing about Jenkins is that it's really sitting at the center of this huge ecosystem. So if you are Jenkins, essentially you know every piece of code that's going to come to you. Who did that change? As part of what team? For what module? Leading into what application? How much time did it take? What tools did it call along the way? What were the results of those tools? You have all of that amazing data that's really coming back to Jenkins. And yet, what do we do today about that data? We just don't care about it. We delete it, right? It's flowing in the ether. And yet, there is huge value in all of that data. So CloudBees DevOptics really leads to become the system of record of next generation IT. If next generation IT is going to be DevOps, then we need a system of record that can record all of those activities going on. And based on that, to be able to extract key insights. But for those insights to be valuable, again, they need to be typed. You need to have objects to really make sense of that data. And once you've got that, you can really start answering some high-quality questions that can unlock value for your teams. Here, we're not talking about taking a bunch of data, pouring it into a bag, and giving access to an XY type of axis, right? And, well, do your report. That's not what we're talking about. We're really talking about having a set of opinionated views into your process and extracting that information to make it possible for you to make quality decision making. All right. So I'd like to present CloudBees DevOptics, and DevOptics is actually an umbrella solution that is composed of multiple sub-solutions or products. The first one we're going to be presenting in a moment and demoing in a moment is Deliver. Deliver provides insights into all things related to continuous delivery. So as an application owner, how can you make sense of the big picture and not just your tiny pipeline? How can you make sense of that and extract key insights? We're also going to be talking about Pulse. Pulse is more focused on the operational aspect of operating a continuous delivery as a service within your organization. What about resources? What about teams? Are they efficient? Are we lacking some resources and so on? And last but not least, we're going to be talking about CloudBees Jenkins Advisor, a new service that I think will be very exciting to you all. Anyway, we're going to get to that. There are more that's going to be coming up. We're going to start with a demo now. Just want to make it clear. This is a long-term strategy, and today you're going to see one of the possible reports we provide with DevOptics, but there is way more to come. So I'd like to welcome on stage Harpreet Singh, VP of Product Management at CloudBees.
So Sacha talked about the journey on digital transformation. Let's illustrate that with an example of a bank. So this is a typical bank with few thousand developers around the world. And the bank has decided that they are going to build a new web application to service their customers. And the application lets you do the standard things. You log in, log out, access your account. If you give your zip code, it gives you the nearest ATM. Nothing too fancy. Next slide. As you move on to this digital transformation journey, the first thing that you do is pick teams to go in and execute things, right? So in our journey here, we ended up with 5 teams that spread across 3 groups. And just for this demo, just keep geolocation in mind. Next slide. And this web application is composed of multiple modules. And for the purpose of the demo, just keep a loose eye on the ATM by zip and the nearest ATM module. Now, each of these modules is delivered by these teams. And what you see on the right-hand side is that for the geolocation team, they have a canonical pipeline of build, QA, security, and release, right? Already looking at something like this, you can see that there are variances between how various teams execute, right? So keep that in mind. So to sum up on the context here, nothing too fancy. This is a web application delivered by multiple teams, and you want some canonical sort of release phases to deliver this. So let's look at how this is actually done in Jenkins today, right? So here we are. This is your classic Jenkins. We modeled some of these pipelines up there, and we've kept it intentionally simple. Now, for the demo, I will wear 3 hats. A Jenkins administrator, shared services admin, as KK had outlined in his talk, a developer, and a VP of engineering, right? So let's wear the developer hat. The first thing you'll know is there's a lot of cognitive load going on here. I don't know which pipelines belong to my teams, which ones should I focus on. If I'm a Jenkins admin, I have the similar problem, except it's compounded. I just don't know which teams I'm supporting, right? As a VP of engineering, I want to bring in the account access team in the shared IT infrastructure. And when I ask this question to the Jenkins admin, we realize that account access team is not here. Something you mentioned as shadow IT, right? So there is account access is doing its own thing. It's very hard to go figure this out. So there's a lot of things going on here. So let's see how at CloudBees we decided to solve this. So to solve this, what we've done is, as Sacha has mentioned, we are introducing two new information architectural concepts that are sorely missing in Jenkins: teams and admins. Right? So I'm wearing the hat of a Jenkins admin here, and I can clearly see, this is a deceptively simple dashboard, I can clearly see the teams that I'm supporting in my organization. Right? So there are 5 teams, as I had outlined. I get a good sense of how many pipelines there are. I can deep dive and understand which pipelines are belong to what team. So in case I want to nuke something, I know who's getting impacted. And I can easily search for things. Right? The shadow IT case of account access not available, easily flagged here. Like, I know it's in here. But that's not all. What we have done is we have made it very, very easy to go and help you create a team. So let's do that. Right? Now, a thing that I wanted to call out here, and I'm going to do something here, foobar team. I'm going to personalize this. I'm going to add people to this team. So I'm going to add Cyril, who's on my team, and I'm going to add myself, and I'm going to hit create team. I'm going to switch to an already created team while this is running in the background. So I wanted to call out a few things here. So one, we have spent a lot of time trying to make best practices turnkey and delivered by software. So when I hit the create team, 3 things have happened underneath. Sacha talked about distributed pipeline architecture. The reason you do distributed pipeline architecture is you want to isolate teams from each other such that a issue in one does not cascade into another one. So by pressing create team, CloudBees Jenkins Enterprise underneath on a shared cloud infrastructure has gone about, found a machine, perhaps multi-tenanted it, set up a master, associated a team with that master. So what you got was distributed pipeline architecture turnkey. That master is resilient and fault tolerant because CJE does that. Number 2, Sacha talked about the assurance program. Right? The assurance program is meant to, we've spent a lot of time ensuring that the key plugins that a lot of our customers depend on are tested robustly. They all work together. Upgrades are seamless. So what we've done is when you create that master, CJE, actually, the CloudBees Jenkins Enterprise actually creates a profile of the assurance program master. So what you get is a robust Jenkins right out of the box. The third thing that we've done is focus on security. As you know, security is an ever-growing, complex beast, and setting up security permissions is very hard, and it's very complex. Not anymore, right? What you saw me doing there when I entered, when I was entering the name, and here the master has come up, the team has already come up. What you saw me doing there when I entered the names of people is we stepped back and we really thought about what's the default set of, what's the opinionated best practices on helping people set security up. And we came up with a prescribed set of roles so that you can associate your teams with, and you can personalize that. And so you get security turnkey out of the box, right? So now that we've hit that create team and that team has come up, what you get as the shared services guy or the Jenkins administrator was you got distributed pipelines architecture out of the box. So things are robust because of CAP. Things are fault tolerant because of CJE, and security best practices are already enabled, right? That's just seamless. So we've clearly made things really, really easy for an Jenkins administrator. Let's look at what we've done for developers. So CJE, CloudBees Jenkins Enterprise, is built on Blue Ocean. So all the work that we've done in the context of open source with Blue Ocean shows up here. So all the work that we do for making developers' life easier with Declarative, with the pipeline editor, with Eric, who came in and talked about the Atlassian Bitbucket support, that's right out of the box for the developers. But that's not all, right? You talked about sort of focus, and I'm a big fan of deep work and focus work. You know this. What we've done here with Teams is provided you this container where I can come in as a developer and I know exactly what's going on with my pipelines, right? In this case, what we've done is we modeled this world with multiple pipelines, but to your point, if there was one pipeline, things would be a lot more clearer as well, right? So I know what to work on. I can switch context very easily, and if I was on the geolocation team and I delivered something to the web team, I can go to the web team and see what's happening, and I can switch context here. And why this is quite interesting to me is there is a couple of studies out there that said that even if you did like a 30-second context switch, it takes your brain about 30 minutes to come back and focus on something. And most organizations, most people spend on an average 6 hours a week, just 6 hours a week on deep work, right, and deep focus. And what we have done here is help you sort of just focus on the work that you want to do. And as you can imagine, the way we'll take this forward is we'll bring in stuff that helps you collaborate with your team better, right? So activity dashboards in terms of what are the pipelines somebody else is working on my team. We want to bring that into this place. We want to bring in DevOps Deliver and help you assess how are you impacting the overall picture, right? So that's the kind of thing we want to do as we go in the future. And this perhaps is the best time to switch into the DevOps demo. So as I mentioned, and you mentioned that there are two informational architectural constructs that we are going to bring in: teams and applications. And when you think about the business application, right, the digital transformation journey, as a company, the business value that's being delivered is that application. It isn't your jobs, pipelines, or teams in Jenkins. It isn't your GitHub repositories. It's not Jira projects. All of these work together in tandem like an orchestra to make music in software delivery. But there is no notion of an application that captures that. And we thought that was sorely missing. And we wanted to move the conversation successfully, as we've done from jobs to pipelines, from pipelines to applications. So what you see here is a list of applications, and the last one is really the key one that I care about. So here are all the applications that are in my organization, and I'm actually going to click on the, if I click the web application, I land onto this page. And there's a lot that's going on here. At the outset, something like this has never been done before, so I'm going to take my time to explain this, right? So first, Jez Humble, I don't know if he's here, but in his canonical CD book, he talked about when you start on the journey of continuous delivery, what you want to do is map your value stream, right? That complex Microsoft thing that you talked about. You map that value stream, you get your teams together, you figure out what are the phases in delivery, right? And that picture that Sacha showed on the Microsoft dashboard, on a whiteboard somewhere, consultants come in and do that. And then you get all the teams and they draw this, and then this goes on a Confluence page and starts rotting away from day 2. What we have done is make this live, right? So what you're seeing here is this my web application, and what you're seeing here is the entire value stream that is showing your issues flowing from commit to production. All right? And the picture is meant to be read left to right, but for the purpose of sort of orienting you here, I'm going to go right to left, and let's break this down. So the big green boxes that you see, in our terminology, we call them gates. They map to your underlying jobs, pipelines, or even phases within the pipeline. So essentially what you're doing is you're mapping stuff over to what's being used in your delivery pipeline. You can see that there are 5 of those teams are represented here, and as I walk through this, you will understand what I'm saying. Each of these green check marks that you see up there are Jira issues that are flowing through the system. So what we are doing here is helping you see how your Jira issues flow from commit to production. Now, because these are Jira issues, they could be your feature requests, they could be your bugs, they could be your tasks, what makes sense to you. So how did we put this picture up? It was as simple as providing us with a simple JSON file when you got together with your teams to figure out what are the handoffs. You put this JSON file, you gave that to us, and we have all the data, as Sacha said, coming in from Jenkins that we can make sense of all the sort of bees flying in this beehive, and we can step back and tell you what's happening. So, and this view that I have done, I have wore the hat of a VP of engineering. What would Spike Washburn in our team would like to see? And I'll explain as I go along what this means. So let's read this right to left. So on the extreme right-hand side, I see the production environment. I see issues in the production environment sitting up there. If I move 3 boxes to the left, you can clearly see it's the www application going through its build, queue, and security phases. Now this web application is composed of, if you go further left, the nearest ATM modules, the account access module, and the bank services module. That's on these 2 down these 3, right? I can see on the left-hand side that the nearest ATM module itself is composed by ATM by zip module. So I can very clearly see there's a cascading thing that's going in. It's almost fanning in from commit to production. And I know all the modules that are involved in delivery of the software, right? And on the extreme left-hand side, I see we are supporting Git, pull requests and non-pull requests as well, right? The other interesting thing is that we can actually help you tie various pieces together. So if I am on the production checkbox here, I can see what's gone in the last 90 days. I can see what's gone in the last 7 days. And I can click on something like this and jump to Jira, right? And see what's going on, right? I can jump to the Jenkins job underneath it. I can jump to the GitHub repositories. So again, what we have done is we've connected all these pictures together. As I said, this is a orchestra getting together to play the harmony of music, the symphony of music. We are not trying to replace these tools. We are making these tools work better. We help you. The next thing that we let you do is help you see things from commit to production. So the first thing I want to talk about is let's wear this hat of a developer, right? And this developer is on the ATM by zip module. And to Sacha's point about visibility of who do I impact, when I come in, like before DevOptics deliver, my line of sight was, well, if some stuff passed through the release phase of ATM by zip right here, I'm good. Now think about this. This is a Friday evening. I checked something in, and Cyril on my team is going to check something in. And I need to answer this question, should I go home? And once you'll see a green check mark coming in as it goes through its various phases of delivery, you'll start seeing things move through. So here you have, it started building it, right? And I have a very clear line of sight of where things are. And while I'm talking, it's going to keep moving through. So I'm going to pick up another example here and just assume that, I checked in ATM Z68. I'm going to search for it, and it tells me that my issue is not in production yet. It's sitting up in the security phase there, right? So clearly I cannot go home, right? That's clear. My Friday night is at work. The other one is, the other interesting one here is the QA person who always used to ping me and ask me like, where is my fix? Where is my fix? He can do the same query and he can find exactly where in the pipeline things are, right? I don't need a hip chat conversation. I don't need a meeting to go and tell him. And this search is deceptively simple, but if you remember, I talked about this is a banking application with masters around the world. So what we have done is we can search across all these masters. We can find the patterns and give you data live, right? So we've talked about the developer. Let's talk about the VP of engineering for whom I built this. So I was very happy as a VP that I had a bunch of stuff that landed in production in the last 7 days. But when I look at this, I see there are 3 choke points going on. There are 3 places where things are not working well. So one is the security team. Clearly, there's a number of check marks here. So issues have gone in. I could click in and go and find out what's happening. But why are these not in production? I can call the engineering manager on this team and ask him what the hell is going on. And in this case, we'll find out that the person who approves changes to production is on vacation, and we'll have somebody else merge the changes in. And Cyril, who's running the demo here, will merge it, and at some point, you'll see all these changes land in production. If I go on the extreme left, and I go under the pull request column, I see on the ATM by zip module here, I have issues stuck in there. Why is that? I can call the engineering manager there and ask a similar question, right? So I'm going to jump by, and I'm going to look at one that bothers most people, right? Which is, this whole box is red. What does that mean? So in this case, when I look onto this, I find that security-8 was a feature that we really cared about, and it's not gone past the release stage. Like, what is going on? I can call the engineering manager. I can give him the details on the ticket number, right down to like who's working on it to find out what the status is. The same can be said of the engineering manager. He can go in and get his developer to go in and commit stuff, right? So as Cyril approves these, gets these changes in, you'll see the red box turning green. If you go up, you see the security stuff has already been cleared and that choke point has already been cleared. So what have we done here, right? What we have done here is, before we had DevOptics, there was no clear line of sight on what's happening in my system, right? As a VP of engineering, I really didn't know what's going on, and I would get on meetings to find out what's happening. And now with DevOptics, we have improved collaboration to the point that I know exactly who to call and what for. It's real actionable insight, right? And an interesting story is, with DevOptics Deliver itself, I used to keep asking this for my from my product manager. And once this view came up, no longer. So in our team itself, it improved communication by 10x, right? The other use case that I found very interesting, and we came across this in Harvard Business Review a few months back, where Bain Capital did a survey where a CEO asked for a status update for his organization, and there's a weekly update, and this goes beyond software. But the cascading effect of the meetings when they went all the way down came about to be 300,000 hours a year in just trying to find this data up, right? All that is really simplified, from us. And as you said, this is just the beginning, right? There's a lot more we can do here. We have all the data. Jenkins has all the stuff going on. We can easily come back and tell you what the cycle time for your team is and what is it in the context of the bigger team. We can tell you how commits are flowing through the system. We can come in and tell you, where developers are most stuck in, what are the key choke points and so on, right? So to summarize, I do believe that we have revolutionized/transformed the way software delivery collaboration is going to happen from here on. And we do so by providing you unparalleled insights that help you focus on business value, right? So with that, I'll ask you to come in to the CloudBees booths tomorrow, or today. And there is a talk by the CloudBees DevOptics team tomorrow, and you should attend that. Thank you, Sacha.
Thank you, Harpreet. That's great. All right, so that was one of the option of DevOptics. So that's one part of Deliver, which will provide much more value over time. One other axis I wanted to talk about is CloudBees Jenkins Advisor. I'm very proud of this one. So what our team started doing, our support and engineering team, 2-3 years ago, as we were answering questions from customers, support tickets, whenever they were able to spot issues that could be detected automatically or that were recurring issues, instead of just solving the ticket and moving on, they would create actually a software, some logic, rules that would detect that problem automatically by analyzing log files or configuration. So what we've decided to do with CloudBees Jenkins Advisor is to productize that knowledge base and make it available to everybody as a SaaS. So the way it's working is that anybody with a Jenkins instance, and it doesn't need to be CloudBees Jenkins Team or CloudBees Jenkins Enterprise, can download a plugin, create an account, hook to this SaaS, and get real-time analysis of where do they stand with their configuration, and receive emails on how things could be improved or what they should be aware of, and maybe they want to fix things. So it's very easy to use. You download the plugin, you install it, you hook it up to the SaaS by creating an account. Then you've got the possibility to decide what you want to send or not send. You have lots of different configuration files and logs, so you might not want to send everybody depending on what you care about. And if an issue pops up, you're going to receive an email with suggestion as to what you can do. So this is going to be made available to everybody for free, essentially. You can sign up today on this URL, and you can also go to the booth. You'll see more about it. But it's a pretty amazing service. So there's going to be a referral program, so you'd better sign up first. All right. The last part of DevOps we're going to talk about today, and there will be more over time than Pulse, Deliver, and Advisor, is Pulse. And Pulse focuses on anything that has to do with the health of your services. It focuses on the operational aspects of operating a cluster at scale, a continuous delivery at scale. So it cares about your metrics, it cares about your load times. And what's amazing is that it hooks into the extended object model we've been talking about around application and teams. So maybe you want to analyze some specific metrics for team and see how they compare and so on. So DevOps Pulse is going to come later this year. It's going to be focused on a very different aspect and very different spectrum than DevOps Deliver. All right. So we are facing some pretty amazing win conditions. If you look at the market these days, you have continuous delivery, you've got cloud, you've got containers, and they're just all reinforcing each other and further accelerating the transformation that takes place on the market, right? They're not competitive or parallel tracks. They're really reinforcing each other. That's really the perfect win condition. And if you look at some of the reference architecture out there, you see all of those technologies being leveraged to further accelerate those transitions. That's pretty amazing. So I'd like to talk about some of the partnership we're announcing today and have some partners come on stage. The first partnership I'm very proud to announce is a partnership we've made with Huawei in China. Huawei has essentially a continuous delivery as a service offering for their own customers called Huawei Dev. So Huawei Dev is going to be embedding technology from CloudBees with CloudBees Jenkins team. We're also announcing that Huawei and China Soft International, which is a subsidiary of Huawei, will be distributing CloudBees in China. And last but not least, Huawei committed to be active from a community standpoint in China and organize a number of community events in China around Jenkins. So this is really an in-depth, across-the-board partnership with Huawei, and we're very proud of that. The second partnership announcement I'd like to talk about is around helping companies adopt DevOps faster. And so when we talk to companies, they're essentially telling us, you know, we really want to accelerate faster, and we think that the cloud is actually great to do this because those are the perfect type of workloads to put on the cloud, CI, CD, amazing fit. So SaaS seems appealing, right? Because you switch it on and you don't need to care about it. However, for most organizations, that's not a fit. Why? Because those organizations want specific customizations. They want specific integrations with different subsystems. They're likely going to have some specific security requirements, VPC, VPN setup, and so on. So that's not going to fly. But the other option is not always very appealing either, to do it on your own and manage everything. As we all know, great DevOps resources are scarce. And so if you can use your DevOps resources to focus on creating business value for your company rather than maintaining your software factory, that's all the better. So to achieve this, obviously, the best of both worlds is to have a managed services offering. It's to have top experts focused on the cloud as well as on the CloudBees product that can customize, maintain, deploy, and upgrade your software factory for you in the cloud according to your specific needs. So today, we're very happy to announce a partnership with five companies. Not only those companies are specialized in managed services, but they're actually specialized in managed services for software factories. So if you want to operate more than CloudBees Jenkins, maybe you want to put a Jira or GitHub, well, that's fine as well. You can get covered through those companies. So I think this is a pretty amazing announcement. Another technology that we've heard talk about from time to time, is obviously Docker. So I'd like to invite Patrick Chanezon from Docker on stage to talk about Docker.
Ciao.
Hey, Patrick.
Thank you.
All right, so I feel like anytime I'm opening a reference architecture or an article, it talks about continuous delivery and it talks about Docker. So
Docker and Jenkins, that's what we're going to talk about today.
All right, so you came with a few slides?
Yeah, definitely. And actually, I like your shoes very much.
Yeah?
But I think there should be a Jenkins logo on the right shoe and then the Docker logo on the left shoe, because you need both to do the DevOps walk.
That's right. That's right.
So maybe we can arrange that after the talk.
So we need to do a second iteration, send that through the pipeline, and we're going to be good to go.
Sounds good.
All right. Thanks, Patrick.
Hey,
the floor is yours.
Sacha. So hi, everybody. I'm Patrick Chanezon from Docker. Before I start, I want to know who among you are using both Jenkins and Docker? OK, so I don't need to talk, maybe. So this talk is really about how Jenkins and Docker are used by many of our customers, our common customers, in the enterprise to modernize their traditional apps. So the theme of Jenkins Conf this week is all about transformation, and that's what we see with our customers, with Docker customers. They're using Docker and very often Jenkins together to modernize their traditional applications. So this is in the context of DevOps. DevOps is really a cultural movement that started many years ago. It's not only about tools. This week we're going to talk a lot about tools, but DevOps is mostly a cultural movement. It's also about people and processes. So really don't underestimate, if you want to adopt a DevOps approach, the cultural aspect, the fact that you need to reorganize your processes and your organization. Hank Kalk from ING at DockerCon a few years ago gave a very good talk about how they reorganized the whole department in order to adopt DevOps. And there's a set of practices, continuous delivery, infrastructure as code, cross-silo collaboration, working in small iteration in order to learn from data, and doing that feedback loop with measurement. So people have been adopting Docker a lot to do that, and very often with Jenkins. One of the things that we see from our customers talking about transformation is that many of them are under a Darwinian pressure to change, as Sacha was explaining before. But the problem they have is that 80% of their budget is stuck into maintenance of existing application. And so the first step that they need to do in order to transform what they're doing and create new type of application is really to modernize their applications. And for that, many of them are using Docker. So they start with an existing application, they convert it to a container, and then that allows them to move that either to modern infrastructure, converged infrastructure on-premise, or any cloud providers. And then they're using CI/CD and things like Jenkins in order to refactor their application and start to break it down into microservices. But there's a continuous flow here where you start by Dockerizing an application in order to modernize it later. And in order to enable that, at Docker, we're building an enterprise product. So like Jenkins Enterprise, this is Docker open source, so the Docker CE Community Edition is open source and free, and Docker Enterprise Edition is our enterprise product with security features that allows the whole workflow from developers to operations. So there's a control plane in there that lets you run your container in a cluster, and there's a trusted registry where your artifacts are stored. And typically, the way our customers are using that is with Jenkins in the middle as the CI/CD element in that tool chain. So how our customers are using Jenkins, if you're looking back at the videos from DockerCon, there's a very good example of one of our customers, Société Générale, who gave a talk about how they're using Docker and Jenkins to modernize their application. And the video is online. It's from this year's DockerCon. I also wanted to talk about how we at Docker are using Jenkins ourselves in order to build the product. So we're building both Docker CE from the open source bits and Docker CE and Docker EE together using Jenkins. So we have a public Jenkins that's building Docker CE. And one of the things that we really love about Jenkins is the fact that it runs everywhere. So at Docker, we're building Docker for multiple architecture, x86, ARM, even IBM mainframe, S390 architectures. We're also building for different operating systems. So Docker works for Linux and for Windows. And so for that, we are building on different cloud providers or infrastructure providers. So we're building on Azure for Windows, on AWS for x86. IBM lent us a mainframe to build on mainframe. We're using Packet for ARM. So the fact that Jenkins works everywhere is really a very good advantage for us. So we're running unit tests and integration tests for Docker CE in our public Jenkins master. And then we also have a private Jenkins master where we're building the full Docker EE. And there we're doing the packaging of Docker EE and CE, pushing that to the different repositories, signing and deployment to production, as well as we're building the full Docker EE suite with all the tests that entails on different architecture and systems. So one last thing I wanted to add is between Docker and Jenkins, it's really a very personal story, which means there are lots of CloudBees employees, Nicolas Delouf and Victor Farsek. Nicolas Delouf, we nickname him very friendly Triceratops. And both of them are Docker captains, and they're very active in the Docker community. You can see their talks about Docker at DockerCon, and you'll hear them here at JenkinsCon. One last thing I wanted to add is we'll have 2 Docker talks here at JenkinsCon, and we have a booth, so you can come to chat with us. So in conclusion, I'd say Docker and Jenkins are really like peanut butter and jelly for developers and ops to modernize their traditional applications. And someone told me that metaphor is very Americanocentric, so for the French people, it's like camembert and baguette.
All right. That makes a lot of sense.
Thank you, Sacha.
Merci, Patrick.
Thanks for having me.
Oops. Nice try. All right. Thanks a lot, Patrick. So I've talked about continuous delivery. I talked about containers. There is this thing called cloud. There is a company that's also known to a few of you, I suspect, called AWS in that space. So I'd like to welcome Mark Schwartz, enterprise strategist at AWS. Welcome, Mark.
Thanks, Sacha.
So, Mark, you've been a CIO at lots of companies, small, larger, public, private. More recently, before joining AWS, you were the CIO, and I'm not going to screw up on that.
No one gets
CIO
the name right. That's fine.
of US Citizenship and Immigration Services.
That's correct.
All right. So you've seen a lot of use cases. You've seen a lot of business transformation. So what can you tell us about some of the biggest challenges faced today by IT leaders?
Well, I think the biggest challenge really at U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, for example, is speed. It's the question of how could we quickly deliver capabilities to the business when it needed them. And I think that's common across the private sector as well. When I think about it, I really think a lot of things come down to cycle time, because it's not just about getting value sooner. It's also about being able to get feedback from users and turn that feedback into actionable changes. It's about mitigating risk, and it's about it's generally about cycle time as a way to get that value to the users as quickly as possible.
All right. And so how did you get about improving this cycle time?
Well, we found that there were two crucial levers, really, to getting there. One was working in the cloud, and another was establishing a DevOps continuous delivery pipeline. So, of course, we used AWS and Jenkins at the core of these things. And the success that we were able to have with AWS is a good part of the reason why I decided to join AWS and why I'm so happy to be a part of it now. Let me give a couple of examples of how we used Jenkins and the DevOps pipeline and how we used the cloud in order to reduce the time it took us to deliver to the end users. The first example maybe is a little bit obvious, and that is the speed to provisioning infrastructure. So in the government, we found that to set up the infrastructure, let's say for a new test environment or something, it sometimes took us as long as 9 months to get there. We had government procurement processes that we had to follow. So by the time that we were able to set up the procurement for hardware, get the hardware delivered, procure services to install it, do the installation, all the compliance, and all of those things, this could take as long as 9 months. On the other hand, with AWS, we can provision a new environment in just minutes. And just as importantly, we could deprovision an environment or turn it off when we no longer needed it. So this was a radical improvement in our cycle time for getting things to production. The second example that I want to bring up is maybe a little bit more subtle. And this was about our speed to security and compliance. U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services is a part of the Department of Homeland Security, so security and compliance were things that we took really seriously. And that could cause these long calendar times to get new features to production. So we developed this idea of when we're building a new system, let's start compliant, and let's regression test constantly to make sure that we stay compliant. And that way, our system is always releasable. We can go to production anytime we want to. So, of course, the regression testing to ensure constant compliance, Jenkins was a critical part of that. That's where the pipeline came in. And we were able to enforce our standards and constantly be testing every time we did a new build.
So that's interesting. That was the first time for me that I heard talk about starting compliance, right? That's pretty amazing. And so yet you had to follow a lot of regulations. So how did you go about that? I mean,
yeah, I thought I was going to sneak that one in. You caught me.
Yeah.
So start compliant and regression test to make sure you're still compliant. We had the FISMA compliance regime, so there was a whole stack of controls that needed to be implemented before we were compliant. This is where AWS really came in, because by spinning up our infrastructure in AWS, because it was already FedRAMP certified, that meant that the controls that were certified by FedRAMP, we could inherit those controls. And so of this big stack of controls, a bunch of them just came with working in AWS infrastructure. But then by adding other services selectively, for example, we created our own identity, credential, and access management system that we could integrate, and that was based to a large extent on AWS's IAM. We had to add controls for logging and auditing, and a lot of those could come with CloudTrail, CloudWatch. We could encrypt data at rest. We could encrypt data in transit. So when you add all of those controls together, we found we were well on the way to compliance before we ever wrote a single line of code. Now, once we started coding and we implemented our infrastructure as code, we found that we were able to constantly enforce our security controls and test. And so in the end, we realized that we were actually more secure in the cloud than we were outside of it. And I think at AWS, we found that a lot of our customers are finding that as well.
That's amazing. We use the cloud, as you know, a lot. We provide product on the cloud, and we really see this amazing reinforcement of both cloud and continuous delivery. So I think this reinforces this point very much. So thanks a lot, Mark, for coming on stage.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right. Transform. That was the theme of, and that is the theme of this conference. I think it's a very exciting time for all of us in IT today. Never before, I think we've seen so strong perfect win conditions in terms of how cloud, containers, and continuous delivery are all aligned. And so, to conclude my keynote, and if there is one thing I'd like you to keep in mind after my presentation, I think, is that don't wait for competitive threats to make you move. Be free. Act on your own terms. Act on your own timeline. Act now. All right. Enjoy the conference. Thanks, everybody. Onward.